So on Saturday, we saw Mikkel Desler go down in front of the press box, and we're worried about what that apparent hamstring injury was going to be. It was clearly a hamstring injury, and as we learned on Thursday, 6 to 8 weeks, probably the longer end of that, the 8 week range. So we're not going to see our starting right back until May.
I mean, I'm not that worried about that. There's better
Okay.
roster depth than there has been. Looks Thomas Riley Thomas, whatever order you want to say his name in, got the short-term
Mhm.
call up from the second team. He had a great
Right, right.
first game of their season. He's going to
Mhm.
make the plane to LA, actual LA, not Carson, California, just to make sure that people know what's happening this weekend in case they don't already. They got Thomas Riley Thomas. I think they're going to be fine. Phil, there's been this legacy of other teams menacing Austin with their teenagers, and now it's other teams' turn to be on the receiving end of that. That's why I'm decidedly unworried about this.
Okay, well he's 22,
A
no longer a
22 a
teenager.
22-year-old teenager, a
Okay,
a 12
I grant
teen
that. Okay,
teenager. Yeah,
sure.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. You do remember a few weeks ago we were talking about short-term agreements and wondering and talking about that as a hypothetical, and now that's been activated in the fourth game of the season.
Non-rostered, does he count as a homegrown? So is this one of six or is this one of four?
It's
Because
one of
the
four.
one of four. Well, I'm still not that worried about that. It's one of four. There are other backline guys for the second team to theoretically call up, and especially if, as
Mhm.
it looks, they're looking to shop vitally. They're probably just generally in the market and looking at stuff. So maybe there's somebody coming. Yeah, I'm really not that worried about it, Phil. What
Okay.
about on the stats side of things? Anything of particular concern there?
Last in tackles plus interceptions.
Mhm.
They are first in XGA, and we explored that a little bit Tuesday. There are the goal concerns too. So there's the scoring concerns, all the kind of offensive numbers that are
Uh, hmm.
not particularly good.
There've only been 3 games played, and
True.
but
Only one goal
Vasquez
scored.
Vasquez and Uzuni, neither one of them scored yet, though, right?
No, 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 no.
I'm not terribly worried. There are a lot of games left in the season. How many? 31 games left in the season.
31. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, let's see what happens on Saturday. Then maybe I get worried.
Emergency podcast. They did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, oh yeah, shut up, oh yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. Moisés, you were convinced that there are no emergencies, that none of this is a concern at all.
The schedule for the season being the way that it works, and when MLS, the season doesn't really begin until August, September.
Yeah,
We're months
I've
months
heard that.
away. Should be fine, I say, with a tinge of burgeoning concern in my voice. But
Right, right.
I tell you, having a matinee game on a Saturday against LAFC, whose coach has immediately come out talking his former player, our new captain in Austin, Ilie Sanchez, is not that big of a difference maker. We'll see how
I
that
missed
goes for
this, but
Steve. Yeah, Steve
when?
Chirundle, he told the media that his team, that they play a much different style
Mhm.
this year, and they've been
Okay.
shown to be able to build play in different styles. Showed very
Mhm.
little emotion for the reunion of this former captain. He dilutes Ilie Sanchez's value as a player in prepping Nico Estevez for LAFC.
And where'd you see this?
On Twitter, I think a screenshot of Twitter as passed around by Chelsea Oliveira,
Yeah.
looking at some sort of a pregame press conference.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. Well, shots fired, I guess. Okay,
Yeah,
that's fun.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
We'll
All
see
right.
how that goes for Steve Chirundolo, who was similarly aggressively bullish right before. Who was it who absolutely clowned Gareth Bale in his MLS debut at Q2 Stadium? Nick Lima?
I'm trying to remember that. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it
yeah.
was Nick Lima and the rest of Austin. But look, that was years ago. My memory's a little hazy. Yeah,
But it was.
I was joking in the intro a bit, but it will be interesting to see what the squad does with what I consider the first real big road match. The Portland road match, yes, it was important. It was a big deal. They were considered the major odds on favorite to win that by ourselves and various others. But
Right.
this LAFC one, the contentious relationship between the clubs being something, there's something different about Austin playing away at the bank, even though it's not the Bank of California anymore. It's BMO, so it's still the bank to me. The,
It's Canadian, so it's bank with a QUE.
where you cash your checks with a Q. But yeah, we'll see if Austin end up being the boys who broke the bank at Monte Carlo. Let's hold out some narrative hope for what I think in the way that Colorado really needed that road win against Austin to change their narrative, that Austin gets a version of that in LA, where I think it's reasonable for us to say that we don't consider them the odds-on favorite to win that,
Right.
but it sure is possible, and it sure would be interesting, and it sure would be interesting in on top of possible if they were able to beat a partially rotated LAFC squad that Cherundolo doesn't think needs to go full out in their home stadium to really take down Austin.
Yeah, this is exactly the kind of dumb MLS matchup that the team that is not favored to win, which I guess in this case would be Austin, wins like 3-1 or something like that. It's setting up for, again, this kind of move towards competitive. Don Garber doesn't like to say parody. He likes to talk about it being competitively interesting or something along those lines. There's some phrase that he uses that is a way around parody. I could see Austin coming out of here with a win and kind of surprising everybody. I could see any outcome at this point because we have seen some different sides of Austin. We've seen some good defense, which they've talked about, and which we're seeing some numbers on, which we'll get into that a little bit more. But then also we have seen them not score goals, which is problematic, but also we've seen a lot of chances. We've seen the proverbial dam about ready to burst, and maybe that happens in LA. Who knows? That would be fun, actually.
That collection of stuff that you just mentioned, Phil, I feel like we should just jump right in and talk about Colorado, because all of that was on display. A lack of scoring goals.
Yes, it was.
Some interesting chance creation, knocking at the door, the dam almost bursting. That really encapsulates that whole match, which in retrospect and in watching it, I think was a lot of frustration for a lot of people, ourselves included. But people are sick of hearing me say, I'm sure by now, there's some really interesting potential happening there. There's some interesting chemistry going on. John Gallagher comes onto the field, and knowing that John is starting at right back at this point, for a while, it felt like they came alive in a special way once John came on. And I promise I don't have money on him or anything. I'm very gambling averse, but there's something about some of the stuff that they did by necessity in terms of subs that made these next few games interesting to me. What stood out to you the most about the Colorado match? Good, bad, anywhere?
Well, aside from Gallagher being on our VerDos ball team, and now he's going to get a run of starts and possibly some more points. So that kind of worked out for us a little bit. I was really impressed with Izuni on his first start, really impressed with his attitude. He was very gracious with media after the match, which not everybody was, which we'll get to in a second. And I thought a lot of hustle. I thought a lot of really heads up plays. Arguably the two best chances that Verde had were those first half shots that he had, the kind of kerfuffle in front of goal around minute 20, and then header and again, there's kind of back and forth. Like the league contends that it hit the post, and I've seen other people say it hit the post, but with my own eyes, my own kind of ocular evidence showed that it got tipped into the post. It looked like it was an on-target shot, but didn't get credited to him with that. And that, of course, was the header in the 43rd minute. Yeah, I feel like he is going to score sooner rather than later. And then again, I think that sets off a whole bunch of scoring. So I feel good about that. And yeah, like you had talked about, Gallagher, and definitely that kind of uptick that happened offensively once he got on there and began to start connecting with Bukari like that. And I like seeing what might happen down the road with that. I of course, do not like the current center back and fullback situation, even though Gallagher starting, I think that is going to be an offensive boost. I don't know what that's going to do necessarily defensively. I do have concerns. To me, one of the low moments of the game, of course, other than the goal being scored and the VAR giveth, VAR taketh away moments that we had two of those. Pro gave some pretty terrible answers to our questions, including one where they explain the offside rule to me. So thank you for that condescension. I really appreciated that. I am talking, of course, in terms of other bad moments, being Dani Pereira almost Kip Kellering in minute 47, passing directly to Rafael Navarro. And were it not for Navarro rushing the shot, getting it a little wide, it would have gifted them a second goal. And I thought that was problematic. And then Dani did not talk to media, even though he saw us stand there waiting to talk to him after the match. So my concern, just an early thesis, we'll see where this goes. We'll see what he does. But my early thesis that I'm beginning to build is that 2025 Dani Pereira is 2024 Sebastian Driussi.
I think that's a valid concern. I don't know how you watch that game and not wonder what was going on. Sometimes
in
you
his
just
head,
have
yeah.
in his head, like sometimes you just have an off game. There are intangibles that we don't necessarily know anything about, that he was evasive and didn't want to talk to the media after the match. I totally get it. If I were him, I would probably be pulling a Sebastian Driussi without the I'm a millionaire part of I don't want to talk to the media. That was very much, you mentioned Uzuni, to tangentially jump across to that for a second. The enthusiasm with which Uzuni was engaging with the media, polar opposite of Driussi, who wanted to be anywhere other than in front of a microphone in the locker room. Right. He wanted to talk to his pals, collect up his stuff, and get the hell out of there the vast majority of the time. I don't think Uzuni had to be told to directly engage with the media. I think that is just the way that this guy, who, if you listen to the Vamos Verde interview that he did, really came up from nothing, where his story is fascinating. The more that we get to learn about this guy, the more interesting he is to me, not just because of the unselfish way that he plays and the way that he is truly looking to put in the shift on all sides of things, not just score and stand in one place and not run back and not help people cover uncovered attackers and that kind of thing. Dani had a very weird game, especially if you look at it as compared to Uzuni, who is still very new to the squad, very new to the dynamics of the squad. Dani knows the majority of these players really well and connects with a lot of these players on a person-to-person level. I don't know how to explain it, and sometimes it's just an off night, and that's all that you can chalk it up to be. Depending on what we see,
he still had a good offensive moment in there. He still had a move where he passed to Desler. Desler got across the six that almost resulted in something. So it wasn't like he was totally bereft 0 out of 10, but there were that almost assist was very troubling, and just some of the other decision making.
It seemed to me like just playing a general off night. I don't know that we have additional data to support there being some other major problem there or some sort of chemistry issue due to falling out with some of his teammates, or some of the kind of like tea leaf reading that we used to have to do of is there a fight between this clique of players and this other? It doesn't read to me at all as being something like that. It will be very interesting to see how he does or does not clear his head in advance of the LAFC match. That's where I'm at.
He did just start a foundation, so I'm wondering if that maybe is some additional stress and pressure that we don't necessarily know behind the scenes, like what that was like, because that's something kind of new, and it's great, but it's also kind of new, kind of weird, right?
It's and it's something that from the announcement his family's going to be involved in. I don't feel like that even is something that I can easily say that I can point to as here's what to chalk this up to is he's distracted from this new thing that he's doing. I don't think so. When he plays Call of Duty, he plays Call of Duty. When he plays soccer, he plays soccer. He is not worrying about making sure that their 501c3 paperwork was completed and that the check was filled out correctly, and worrying about going down to the state tax office and filing something. The more I try to overthink about it, it really just came off as sometimes you just have an off game. Sometimes it just does not click, and he just had one of those nights. And if it's a matter of getting one of those out of the way early in the season, great. If it becomes a pattern, That's the greater concern. And that's why I'm not really that worried about Dani Pereira.
I can understand the lack of appeal in seeing Jorge and I hanging out, ready to talk, and maybe avoiding that. Maybe it was just kind of like a not tonight. I mean, we'll see as the season progresses, like his willingness to talk or not talk. I mean, they did put him in the media corps last week, I believe, during the midweek, and he was fine there. So again, yeah, maybe just an off night all the way around. Whereas Azuni, though, I do want to make this point about Azuni. I mean, Azuni came over. He had a towel, first of all. We thought, oh, we're not going to get him. He like just got out of the shower. Puts on a t-shirt, a fancy, like probably $200 t-shirt, because he can do that now. He, again, came up from humble roots and now can buy designer gear. God bless him, because he worked really hard. So puts on this t-shirt over a towel and just has the caveat to just film him from the waist up, because Jorge was doing his usual filming with his iPhone kind of thing. And yeah, he was great. He answered questions, and they were, again, kind of boring answers, because he's very much in that kind of athlete, gonna win, gonna score goals kind of mold. But still, yeah, he's totally bought in. We could just tell from his answers that he's already working on chemistry with the team. He's already into the project. He's already feeling like he is part of things. And it's great. It's good to see. It's good to see his buy-in. It's good to see his energy. It's good to see the amount of effort that he's putting into things right off. If you're a DP, you should be putting in probably more effort than everybody else, but no complaints at all about anything he's doing. I just want to see one of those chances go in sooner rather than later, as I'm sure we all do. I'm sure I'm not alone in that.
Do you want to move on to where your concerns lie as we're addressing the general nerves of where things are at currently? Is there anything beyond what we've covered so far? Is there anything overarching that has Phil West on the edge of his seat?
Not really. It is just, again, no goals from open play in the first 3 games. That's concerning. I do feel, based on what we're seeing, what we've been seeing in the games, it's definitely not the vibes of last year. Last year, it felt like, okay, not only is this team not scoring, but this team is not creating chances. This team is really struggling to move the ball forward, to get into the final third, to get passes into the box, all of those things that you want to see a team do. Austin wasn't doing in the first part of the season. And yeah, you could chalk some of that up to the Driussi injury, but it seemed like there was such an emphasis on defense last year that it came at the offense's expense. And there's certainly a focus on defense again this year. And you're seeing the defensive numbers, you're seeing the things that Stuver said in the Thursday press conference that I got up in the article this morning. All of those things bode. All of those things are good. Again, it's weird. They're last, like we talked about, in tackles and interceptions, but they're still first in expected goals allowed after 3 games at this point. And I think a lot of that, as I made the point in the Tuesday article, has a lot to do with just they are possessing a little bit more and they are controlling things a little bit more. It's just about getting that final product in. And again, that is a big concern, but they seem to be doing a lot of things right at this stage. There's a lot that I'm seeing in Estevez's plan and a lot of what I'm seeing in the execution of that, in terms of, you look at, I had talked about this on Tuesday as well, you look at the final third touches, you look at the middle third touches, they're top third in the league in those categories, versus last year they were dismal, like bottom third or towards the bottom in those categories all season. And again, that's all season, right? So that's not even counting those first few games. We knew those were miserable. We saw those games. We suffered through those games. We saw the horseshoe of sadness. We saw passing it around that horseshoe of sadness down 2-0 in the 80th minute against Orlando. What were they doing? I don't have those kind of concerns this year. They seem a lot more dialed in. They seem a lot more focused on something that is more positive, that is more progressive, that is getting that ball into the places where it needs to be. It's just a matter of chemistry. It's just a matter, I think, at this point, of cohesion, because again, some of these players are pretty new to each other.
Before we move across to the LAFC match, you want to talk second team for a moment? Because I think
Sure.
in talking about concerns and talking about concerns about scoring, there is a team within the club that does not have a problem scoring, as they scored 4 goals by 4 different players in their season debut last week, wearing their brand new jerseys, and that is Austin FC 2. I think.
And how long did it take them to score those 4 goals?
Guess what? Jimmy Farcarlin broke a Next Pro record in terms of how fast he scored. That was a great way to kick things off, and that the additional goals were coming in thick and fast. on the other side of that, I think was buoying to folks who had followed the second team through their championship season in 2023 and kept following them in 2024 as they were in the process of a big rebuild of their own. New reinforcements, Jorge Alastui being one of the goal scorers, trained at La Masia, great pedigree that proved to actually have those results tied to it. As we're recording this, they're getting ready to kick off against Minnesota 2, or as I refer to them, Minnesota. And the team sheet just dropped, and
Okay.
Alastui is on there as a sub. So even though he took a studs up tackle that everybody watching it with eyes thought should have been a straight red, the ref had to be convinced that it was a yellow. Speaking of assistant refereeing and Pro 2 could do a little better with their assistant referees actually keeping an eye on their sidelines, because if the AR on that side had been watching that sideline, that would have been a red. That would have been a red from consultation with one's AR, which is definitely a thing the ref can do. Neither do I.
I don't know how
shocked.
it wasn't. Yeah.
I love that they replayed it on the broadcast, because it wasn't just the sickos in the stands and in the chat rooms going nuts about it. It's that ref almost lost control of that game. And when Anthony Deonda came on, I went, oh, the yellow card king of Austin FC2.
Right.
Dani Pereira Jr. has joined the chat, was what I thought when Anthony Deonda came on. It was, what a great match to watch. How buoying for those players, even though their last game last season ended in a loss, ended with them not making it to the playoffs. That new U.S. men's national team coach, Pochettino, was there with his staff, which then included Nico Estevez, watching the match, made a point to go down to the pitch, say hi to the players, say hi to their coach, Brett Utley. This feels like poetically exactly what you want for these players and for this project, which last time we talked to Burrell, sporting director, told us that team is all about development. The talent gap is vast, but it is not so vast that the second team's new number 2, Riley Thomas, did not get his first short-term agreement and get on the plane to LA. Now, the other thing that I want to mention on that front, from looking at this team sheet, is who is not on it is Jimmy Farcarlin, which means Jimmy Farcarlin is on the plane too.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
That's what that means.
Right? Yeah. CJ Fodre, also not on the team sheet, but he also wasn't on the team sheet for the second team last week. You can assume that he's going to be with the first team the majority of the time. And even if he isn't getting that many minutes, it is much more useful for them to have him. But looking at this lineup, you've got Peter Grogan and Micah Burton playing up top. You've got Irvin Torres, the team's new number 8, playing in the midfield, another one of the goal scorers. To me, a level-headed kid who, thinking to Uzuni, has an interesting, not super easy life story. Having a single mom that he waits to pick him up from practice, from his real adult job that he's got as a teenager. That kid, to me, has the mentality to play teenage first team minutes, I think, more than anybody else on this lineup.
Possibly by the end of the season.
Possibly by the end of the season, possibly by the end of the spring, if you ask me. There is that possibility. And knowing that he and some of the other second team guys are regularly working in with the first team players, going back to things that were said last year about him, you watch those minutes he gets with the second team and you are seeing a preview of things to come. He is the most likely, in my mind, to get that supplemental slot as a first team player while still playing most of his minutes at the second team, like Jimmy Farcarlin is. Having the dual captains of Antonio Gomez and Nico Van Rijn. Tony Gomez is wearing the armband for tonight's game. There are some good, solid, interesting things in the works for this squad going into this season. And I think this Minnesota game is going to be an echo of the Colorado 2 game last week. It is the best value in professional soccer, these second team games out at Parmer. Hopefully it is convenient for you, but those $12 tickets, you get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And I'm seeing the style of play that our new coach, that the sporting director is comfortable with the first team running. That's what the second team's running. And that is the kind of synchronicity that we have seen across other teams. And this more dynamic style of play, this more threatening attack, I feel like people like ourselves who are waiting to see the first team break that dam, you're going to get you're going to get an impression of what the first team is trying to do from the way that these second team players who have had longer to play in with each other, what they have gotten the ability to get into well-oiled machine territory during their preseason, that it's just going to take a little bit more time to get everybody properly gelling with each other. It's almost there.
And I think Micah Burton is maybe making a leap from last year. Like, he looked real good in that first game.
He really is. He talked to me after one of the games last year about how he just hit a slump. And toward the end of last season, he worked his way out of it, and he was showing that promise that everybody has been seeing from him. And I know that I think the popular opinion on him is maybe he just isn't going to work out. Good luck to him in USL. I still believe in the kid. I think he's got something special. And I think what he needed was a better, more cohesive group of guys around him, that as they have shed some players that were not cohering terribly well, Sebastian Pino for one, when you hear players' drunken parents talk about the team's number 9 being out in space and constantly getting in people's way, those people watch these kids play a lot and have been watching a lot of things, and never discount the incredible value of the veteran drunk parent perspective when it comes to who is just not clicking with everybody else.
They're good for Cemental, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And incredibly entertaining too. Sometimes I luck out and they're just right in front of the press row, but sometimes I have to make do with reports that I get from so-and-so who realizes they were behind so-and-so's uncle or something.
I know they entered the chat right before the Wolf stuff broke, about the Wolf stuff.
That is the understanding that I get. The second team don't miss the terrible cinematography if you watch it on YouTube or MLS Season Pass, but go out to Parmer and have a great family-friendly experience. Even though they've dialed back the restaurant availability at the pitch, you can still get an incredibly cheap pitcher of beer for sometimes the price of a beer at the stadium.
And by dial back, I heard it's just the burger place that's open now.
It's like the burger place and one other thing that's mostly a bar, as I understand it.
That's concerning. Okay.
Yeah, but it's something or another about the pitch being up for sale or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So I can get them not having a bunch of contract restaurateurs in place as that's going through the process. But
seems like it'd be time to get some food trucks out there, maybe.
It sure would be cool, but technically that's what the containers are supposed to be, is like food trucks without the wheels, in theory.
Right.
But yeah, hey, get Paprika set up out there and everybody will be happy.
Yeah. All right. By the time you're hearing this, of course, on Saturday morning, you will see how VerDos did against Minnesota.
Minnesota. Minnesota. M-I-N.
Minnesota?
Minnesota. Minnesota.
I see what you're doing. I see what I'm doing.
Miniature Minnesota. Yes. Yes.
Right. Minnesota. Not to be confused with Hawk Tua.
Never to be confused with Hawk Tua.
Nothing should be.
By the time people are listening to this, it'll be Saturday. It'll be LAFC away game day. And Phil, our pals at Los Verdes, have a watch party with a special benefit aspect to it. They're going to be out at ABW Sprinkle Valley, not the OG, ABW Sprinkle Valley, which is
close to my house, and I might be out at ABW Sprinkle Valley.
You should go.
I should.
Huge amount of space, very kid friendly, a whole kid village kind of area. Just lots and lots of room, lots of great food. And Los Verdes' watch party is going to be benefiting Queertopia. Queertopia has this thing called the Magic Queer Bus, and it provides the unhoused LGBTQ plus community in Austin with resources that otherwise they don't exist without community-based organizations like this. The bus has been around, and in 2022 had a big blowout on 35, and the AC unit was wrecked. And so what Los Verdes is trying to do is put together donations to help fix the bus so that Queertopia can keep helping the Black, Brown, and Indigenous LGBTQ plus community of Austin, Texas. So in that quest, Austin Beer Works is donating 10% of all sales during the event to Queertopia. And people can also purchase a collaboration koozie designed by Jesse Sosa, who designed the Don't Mess with Trans Texans TIFO last year, designed this year's 2025 Los Verdes member scarf in the imminently shipping membership pack.
I love a koozie.
I love a koozie too. You can directly Venmo at Queertopia ATX, Cash App, PayPal. Same
Mhm.
address for PayPal. It's queertopians@gmail.com with an S at the end. If you haven't done one of these Los Verdes watch parties, go out, get some good food and drink, have a good time. Even if you're not a Los Verdes member, any and all are welcome. Y'all means all in many different ways because
Mhm.
all is all. And that watch party starts 1:30 p.m., lasts until 5. Hang
Mhm.
out earlier, hang out later. That's up to you. Just show up ready to have a good time. There will be amazing food and drink specials along
Okay.
with rotating limited editions. They might actually still have some of the new Lunar New Year. It's like a snake themed sour that I really like. I forget the name of it exactly because Austin Beer Works did not pay for promotional consideration on this, but you'll know it if you see it. Ask them for the snake beer. It's really good if you like sours.
Okay. Sounds great. Sounds good. And you might see me there too. Maybe that's a bonus.
A
Maybe
wild
that's
a wild Phil appears.
right, right. We'll see. Yeah. I think I can make that actually. I think, yeah, I think that I think it makes sense. So great, good. And it sounds like, yeah, good cause and good time to be had with Los Verdes as usual. So yeah, that's awesome. And that's out again, that is the Sprinkle Valley one that is out on Springdale, like north of 290, kind of northeasty. It's not the one by the stadium. So don't do that or you'll be confused and not surrounded by people in Verde and Black. Probably.
So the LAFC game, Phil. What are we anticipating? How do you anticipate them rotating much or at all? I posed that as a possibility,
Mhm.
not necessarily guaranteeing that they would definitely go that route. Let's
Yeah, I
say
mean
they
they
do.
did a Champions League.
They had
There was
Champions
that.
League, so that's why I'm thinking it's a possibility. If they
Mhm.
rotate, who do you think they rotate and rest?
That's a good question. I don't expect that Denny Bouanga is going to sit because Denny Bouanga will probably never sit, but he scored the lone goal in their 2-1 loss to the Crew in the 90 plus sixth minute. Abobasi also started that game. And then other player on the front line was David Martinez, who is actually more of a midfielder, Venezuelan player, young player, 19-year-old. So he's been slated, I think, to get more minutes. Unger, who's their new Turkish winger, he ended up finishing that game. So you might see him starting. I think they'll do like a decent amount of rotating. Again, I don't know if Trendelo's putting up a smokescreen and saying that they're gonna maybe rotate a little bit more than you would think because they can because it's just Austin, which is maybe what he was trying to hint at. I think they'll do a fair amount of rotation. They're crazy deep as they usually are. They've had some players obviously exit, Bogush in particular, and actually Justin Ruderman, our pal from Striker Days, and is now doing a lot of coverage with the MLS. He is still an authority on many things LAFC. So he did a foreign exchange, which we're going to get up right after the podcast on Verde all day on Saturday morning. So look for that. We'll get some intel about some of the offseason moves they've made. Of course, Mark Delgado, who was with the Galaxy, moved across town and is now part of LAFC. So you remember you probably didn't like Mark Delgado too much in last year's Galaxy Austin game for some moves that he had on Usman Bukari. You might remember that. And he has switched allegiances. He is now with LAFC. So you can dislike him in colors that you usually dislike him in rather than other colors. And then Palencia, who had some kind of racist allegations in the match against the Rapids, which CONCACAF then said, nope, didn't happen. He ended up playing in that game as well. He played the full 90. I don't know that we'll necessarily see him if they're rotating, but if you're looking for other players to be disdainful about on LAFC, you have another candidate. So congratulations. Any thoughts that you have just immediately about kind of what they're going to do and what we might see from LAFC other than continued dislike? Austin did decently well against them last season, even though they didn't do decently well against a lot of other teams in the league. A pair of draws, 1-1 there and a similar in the return leg.
I've said most of what I think I have to say about prognosticating. The reason I brought up rotation was maybe it's better for Austin if they don't feel like they need to rotate. If they bring in some fresher legs, some younger bucks who are eager to do the teenager thing, Maybe it's better. It's better for Austin if they go, we don't really need to rotate. These guys are good. Maybe they anticipate doing some earlier than usual subs if it looks like LA can get to a breakout early lead. That's really where my head's at. Is I feel like if there is a better situation, it is that resting on the laurels, not worrying about them that much mode of Cherundolo. That's what favors Austin a lot more than anything.
Yeah. They did lose 2-0 in Leagues Cup round of 32 after, of course, the very good group stage run. Of course, because of weird Leagues Cup rules, they won their group and then they had to go travel to LA because it didn't have anything to do with whether you won your group or not, or who you beat, or how impressively you beat Liga MX teams. It was all based on weird seeding stuff that happened in the group stages. LAFC got to host, even though Austin had a much more impressive group stage. Leagues Cup, ladies and gentlemen.
Leagues Cup, the cup in which there are leagues, and
Yes, 2 of them.
leagues
Fact.
leagues that compete for a cup. I make fun of Leagues Cup. I think some of the revamping that they've done to make sure that there is that interleague play guaranteed up until you get to knockouts.
Right.
Overdue. Sure. I'm glad that it happened. We'll see if it's more interesting and engaging to watch than CONCACAF Champions Cup has been, which it's been fine. There's been some interesting stuff, but it's the CONCACAF Cup. It's as much as they want, as much as their social media handles try to call it the champions to evoke UCL. It's another cup competition. Cool. It's not, it is not the kind of prestige thing that they want it to be. And that frankly, that's why Leagues Cup exists. That's why the towering behemoth top flight leagues of North America went, we can make better money at this, and created the Money Cup. That's where it came from. Right. Plain and simple.
I enjoy Leagues Cup chaos. Again, like, not at the expense of Open Cup. It's been strange. Of course, Austin will be in Open Cup finally this year, the first team, not the second team. So after that weird hiatus last year, and then of course in 23, they won against New Mexico, and then they lost to the Fire. They've had a weird relationship with cup competitions over the years. Actually, last year's League Cup was arguably the best cup competition that Austin's had, and they still crashed out in the round of 32. You know?
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
Yeah, you can have some absolutely extraordinary group stage stuff happen, but then, well, that was the group stage. Sorry.
Right. There's one more element of this LAFC match that we have to talk about, and Brad Stuver talked about this as kind of the secret weapon. Yeah, LA, of course, did play with LAFC last year and the 2 years prior, which, of course, Cherundolo commented maybe they don't need him. Igor Jesus has come on for LAFC as a younger, maybe sturdier D-mid. So from that kind of perspective of kind of pure talent and youth and all that, maybe LAFC is better off. But of course, LA has veteran cunning and wile and leadership and all that sort of thing. And plus, he knows a little bit about LAFC and how LAFC operates and all that. There is that intel that Steve was talking about. They're leaning on LA a little bit for maybe some kind of that insider information to maybe give a little bit of an edge that they haven't necessarily had in years past, because they have not had the luxury of having a former LAFC player playing with them as they do this year.
I feel like the Ilie factor cannot be discounted. Who knows? 24 hours from now, we could be shown to be completely wrong about that. But I think the Ilie factor, and the fact that apparently, according to sources, he's been out helping coach the U15s in the academy. When he gets involved in his club, he really is involved in his club. The stories Nico told of how he is often the first one there and the last one to leave. He is not all talk. Like, he is putting up the minutes, not only on the field, but on the touchline as Coach Ilie. You really love to see it. That is the kind of good vibes, good energy kind of thing. And it could be that he is that lawful good, happy warrior who is happy to absolutely murk his old team while probably still being the kind of upstanding statesman to not goal selly in front of his former home crowd. It sure doesn't seem like he's going to not enjoy it a little bit if he does end up taking one and robbing them of a clean sheet, for example. It feels like there'll be some interesting energy out of that.
So lawful good. So Ilie could be a paladin then.
Indeed. Paladin
Yeah.
Ilie. You put that sword in his hand and the right angle of light behind him as he rides into battle, and that's him.
Mm-hmm. We probably do need to do the alignments of all the Austin FC players, right?
Absolutely.
So Stuver's chaotic good, probably, right?
I think so. Like when he came out of the goal in that Houston game where they scored on us from midfield, that is chaotic good right there.
He had a throw in the Colorado game.
When I saw him pick up the ball, and I just about lost it. I just about fell out. I was like, that man has a special kind of energy. I don't know if I swear I'm going to stop saying it. I don't know if he would have gotten away with that under Josh. I just don't know.
We don't know that he got away with it under Estevez.
Under Nico. That's true. It's true. It's true. He could have gotten okay, you got one, and that's it.
All right. Anything else that we need to cover? Again, we are in this early part of the season. Again, once we finish 4/10 of this game, so like probably around like minute 40, I guess we'll say, we're going to be a 10th of the way through the season, and then we'll be past a 10th of the way through the season once this game finishes up on Saturday afternoon. And of course, we'll still have the opportunity. Oh, you know what? We can watch MLS 360 on Saturday night. We're a matinee game, so
can do the proper quad box. My favorite way to experience multiple MLS games.
So you're going to be your own MLS 360, essentially.
Something like that. Something like that. It's a favorite thing.
Okay, good. I'm kind of excited for having a matinee game. Excited for being done watching Austin soccer by 5 p.m. You can tell I'm an older gentleman. Like that excites me. So
it's
after having to do like West Coast games that start at 9:30 are the absolute worst for me.
I just like that it doesn't interfere with bedtime the way that Portland did.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. I mean, of course, I was on gala time. I was on Whataburger fueled gala time. So, which, by the way, a lot of people did not like the theory that I had. A lot of people were not necessarily offended by the idea of Whataburger being sad eating food, but people really feel like there's a whole emotional spectrum around Whataburger that I didn't realize people had kind of felt so deeply about Whataburger. But I guess I should have surmised that because it
Phil.
is Texas and it is
yes,
Whataburger.
Phil. I tried to warn you. And you can't say that I didn't. I tried to warn you.
But that's what makes us good. So, like, if we were just agreeing with each other all the time, then
that's boring. Yeah, that's where people get the entertainment value out of this.
Exactly. Yeah. Or anything else
it's important to know that it's Lent time, which means Popeyes has their flounder fish sandwich again. So while we're talking about fast food, don't sleep on the Popeyes flounder fish sandwich. It is great, regular or spicy.
Well, as we know, resident Catholic on the podcast, I am doing Lenten things. So yes, I did have the Thundercloud Texas tuna today. Speaking of local foods,
it
was fine.
The Texas tuna is aggressively fine. It's an Austin rite of passage. You've had one, you've had a million. They all taste the same, which is perfectly acceptable. You know what
Thundercloud is? It's close to my day job. So that factored in today too.
You just described the appeal of Thundercloud for these many years for a lot of people. That's close to my day job. I could get there. It's fine. It's good.
Right.
A really stoned guy took 30 minutes to make me a tuna sandwich, and it was fine.
See, I ordered it online and it was like there, like I walked and it was there and I picked it up and it was done. Yeah. But usually it is a kind of exercise in how stoned is this employee and how is it affecting their abilities to make a sandwich, to be a sandwich artist, as it were. Is that a Subway thing? I don't.
That is a Subway thing. You're encroaching on so many trademarks right now.
I just find sandwich artist to be a delightful phrase.
Sandwich artiste, please. Give it the status control it deserves.
Do you think that's not there? Yeah, Subway does not put an E on the end of artist. They do not make it artiste.
That's just how people pronounce it.
So you pronounce it. Maybe.
So I say people. I'm people. I count.
Yeah, you know. All right, that is gonna, I guess, do it for this week's installment. Next week, we will preview, of course, the San Diego FC game, first time that San Diego comes to town. Chucky Lozano has been injured, but perhaps we will get to see him. They're a fun, exciting team. That is another matinee game. That is a Sunday afternoon game, so that should be interesting. I believe we're not going to also have Leo Väisänen because he got a Finland call up in the midst of everything going on this week. So we have a little bit of a backline injury crisis, and now we have a international call up induced crisis to add to that injury crisis. This is the fun byproduct of not only having injuries, but also having players that are still good enough to be called up by their international teams. It is Leo and it is Finland, but I have a feeling that could probably be used about this point in the season. Hopefully we're avoiding additional injuries and additional further emergencies. Anything to add otherwise before we get on out of here?
Not really. We're in the 4th minute of the second team game, and it's still 0-0, and we'll see how it goes from here. Daniel Cheshla was among the starters out at right back, and we'll see how he does.
Anything else exciting in terms of the lineup?
Dan Chutsu is one of the subs, as is Gruchevsky.
Okay.
And Academy amateur agreement guys, Minez and Barawia are on there, as is Cavalcante. Maybe we see some Academy boys get some minutes. Who knows?
You're now just doing a pronunciation flex.
Yep. Thanks to the club providing pronunciations for everyone's names.
Right, which are important. All right, we're on out of here. Have a good week. Enjoy all the soccer, and we will see you to preview San Diego next week.
That is like the worst thing I've ever heard in the history of the 7 years that I've been on this planet.